drips or puddles that would indicate leaks. I'm going to look at the truck, make sure it's not leaning one side or the other, which would indicate suspension or tire trouble. I'm going to look at all my lights. I'm going to start with my clearance lights. They're clean, amber in color, not missing or broken. I'm going to check out my reflector on each side. Make sure they're clean, amber in color, not missing or broken. I'm going to check my running light, four-way, and turn signals on each side. Make sure they're clean, amber in color, not missing or broken. I'll check my high beam and low beam. Make sure they're clean, clear in color, not missing or broken. Now we're going to lift the hood. We're going to start on this side. I'm going to check all my hoses on this side. Make sure they're secured at both ends. No abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. I'm going to check out all of my electrical wires. Make sure they're secured at both ends. No cuts, tears, or frays. I'm going to check out my alternator. It is securely mounted. It is not damaged. The wires are properly fastened and not damaged. And it is belt driven. I'm going to check my belt. Make sure it has no more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch play. And the condition of the belt. It is not cut, torn, or frayed. I am going to follow this hose back in there, and there is my water pump. It is securely mounted. It is not damaged. It is not leaking, and it is belt driven. I'm going to go to the belt, make sure it has no more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch plate, and it is not cut, torn, or frayed. Now we're going to go to the other side of the engine. Check my hoses here too, all of them. Make sure they're secured at both ends, not cut, torn, no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. I'm going to check all my electrical lines on this side. Make sure they're secured at both ends, not cut, torn, frayed, no exposed wires. I'm going to start at the top, top to bottom, left to right, inside out. I'm going to check my coolant level. Make sure it's at the proper level. The cap is tight, it's securely mounted, not leaking or cracked. I'm going to go to my oil. I do not have to actually check it. I'm going to tell you what I would do. I'm going to pull it out, wipe it, put it back in, pull it out. It must be at the refill line or above. And if I needed to add, I would add here. My power steering reservoir. The cap is tight, it's securely mounted, not leaking or cracked, and it's at the proper level. I'm going to look at both my hoses specifically out of the power steering box, go into the box and to the pump. Make sure they're secured at both ends, no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. I'm going to go to my power steering pump. It is securely mounted. It is not damaged. It is not leaking, and it is gear driven. In front of that is my air compressor. It is securely mounted. It is not damaged. It is not leaking, and it is gear driven. I'm going to go to my power steering box, or my steering box. It is securely mounted. No missing, loose, or broken nuts and bolts. It's not cracked. It's not leaking. Notice how I do the the steering linkage per chapter 11. I'm going to look at my links, arms, and rods from my gearbox to the wheel, and I'm going to make sure they're not bent, cracked, or broken. I'm going to check out all my joints and sockets and make sure they're not worn or loose. And I'm going to make sure I have no missing nuts, bolts, castle nuts, or cotter pins. Now I'm going to go to my suspension. Per chapter 11, my shock absorbers are securely mounted and not leaking. I'm going to look at my front leaf spring mount. It is securely mounted to the frame. No missing, loose, or broken nuts and bolts, not cracked or damaged. My leaf springs are not missing, shifted, cracked, or broken. My U-bolts, they appear to be nice and tight. They have no missing, loose, or broken nuts, bolts, and there's no damage. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. I have a rear spring mount. It is securely mounted to the frame. No missing, loose, or broken nuts and bolts. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. Now I'm going to go to my braking system. My brake hose, secured at both ends. No abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. My brake chamber, securely mounted. No missing, loose, or broken nuts, bolts, or clamps. I must have my clamps there and not damaged and tight. The brake chamber itself has no dents, cracks, holes, or leaks. Coming out of that is my push rod. I simply need to check that my push rod, if the brakes were released, if I pull on it, it shouldn't travel more than 1 inch. My slack adjuster has no missing, loose, or broken parts, no damage. Inside the wheel, I have my brake drum. It's nice and smooth. There's no cracks, dents, or holes. It's security mounted with no missing bolts and no dog, no debris, oil, or grease. Inside that, I have my brake pads, wherever they're at, right here, brake pads. They're also nice and smooth. No dents, cracks, or holes. No debris, oil, or grease. And one extra thing, they are not worn dangerously thin. They have at least a 1/4 inch pad. Okay, I'm gonna go to my tires now. I need to talk about inflation, condition, and depth. So on the condition, I'm gonna look at my sidewalls. They have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. I'm gonna check my tread, make sure it's evenly worn. Now my depth, I have at least on my steer tires 4/32 depth. My inflation, I'm gonna check my metal valve stem and cap. It's not missing, loose, or damaged or leaking. And I would use a tire gauge to check for proper inflation, which is 110 on this truck. Okay, now I'm going to check my rims inside and out. They're not cracked, bent. There's no illegal welds. It is secured to the tire. There's no signs of rust trails that would show that it might be loose from the tire, and there's no welding repairs. Lug nuts, first I need to recognize that they're all there, they're present. My bolt holes are not distorted or cracked. There's also no rust trails around the bolt holes or shiny threads, which would indicate that it came loose. My hub axle seal is not leaking, and I would check the level through the sight glass. Okay, stop the video there.